Have you ever wondered what it's like to save a life? To hold a fragile creature in your hands and watch it grow stronger day by day? This is the story of Keto, a tiny bird who fell from the sky and into my heart. It began on an ordinary afternoon along a quiet country road near the edge of Mount Elgon National Park in Kenya. The air smelled of fresh grass after morning rain, and the tall trees along the roadside whispered in the wind. As I walked slowly beneath their shade, something small fell suddenly from above, a faint flutter, then a tiny thud in the dust. 2 nestlings had dropped from a branch high overhead. Their soft bodies quivered in the dirt, their eyes barely open. I froze, then bent down. One of them, heartbreakingly, had been struck by a passing car. Its fragile body lay motionless. But the other, though trembling, was still alive. Its tiny chest rose and fell quickly, and when I picked it up gently in my palm, the chick opened its beak wide, crying soundlessly for food. I named him Keto, meaning precious in Swahili. From that moment, I knew I could not leave him there. With one hand shielding his fragile body, I carried Keto home. He was weightless, barely a handful of warm feathers and fragile bones. At home, I quickly gathered soft scraps of cloth and lined a small wooden box. To make sure it felt like a nest, I padded the bottom with dry grass and cotton, shaping a hollow where Keto could curl. He immediately tucked himself into the warmth, still chirping faintly. But one urgent problem remained: food. A wild chick eats what its parents bring: worms, insects, and tiny grubs. I had nothing like that at home. In desperation, I stepped outside with a spade, turning the damp soil near the garden until I found a few wriggling earthworms. With trembling hands, I cut a small piece and placed it before Keto. To my relief, he gaped his mouth wide and swallowed greedily. His hunger was fierce, almost desperate. I dug up more worms until his little belly seemed full. That night, when he chirped again, I softened a few grains of rice and fed them to him carefully. It wasn't ideal, but it was all I had. Somehow, he survived the night. 6 days passed. Against all odds, Keto was still alive. I developed a routine: digging worms in the morning, feeding him every 2 hours, then keeping him safe in his box at night. I worried constantly about the neighborhood cats. To protect him, I covered the box with a mesh lid after sunset. Keto was no longer the helpless scrap of feathers I had first carried home. His chirps grew louder, his appetite insatiable. Each time I lifted the lid, he would stretch his neck and gape his beak as wide as it could go, begging for food. His sheer will to live filled me with determination. I thought of building him a better nest. One evening, I found a stainless steel bowl, lined it with soft cloth, and placed it inside his box. It became a little sanctuary, warm, round, and safe. Keto seemed to settle into it with relief, his tiny body sinking into the soft padding. On the 9th day, I walked to a fishing supply store in town and bought a small container of mealworms. The shopkeeper smiled knowingly when I explained why I needed them. Back home, I offered Keto his first taste. He gobbled it eagerly, chirping for more. From then on, mealworms became his favorite food. That night, after a hearty meal, Keto nestled deep into his bowl and fell asleep almost instantly. Watching him breathe steadily under the lamplight, I felt a quiet joy that I had never experienced before. 10 days since I had first found him, a package finally arrived. A small bag of formulated baby bird food I had ordered online. I couldn't wait to try it. Made a simple feeding spoon out of bamboo, smoothing its edges so it would not hurt his fragile beak. Mixing the powder with warm water, I scooped a small amount and held it near him. Keto lunged forward hungrily, swallowing the new food with enthusiasm. It smelled rich, packed with nutrients. I sighed with relief. This would help him grow stronger. Already, small feathers were pushing through his downy skin. Each day I brushed them gently with a soft toothbrush, encouraging them to grow neatly. He looked stronger, more alert, more alive. 2 weeks later, Keto had transformed. His wings had filled out, his feathers shone in the sunlight. On bright mornings, I placed his box outside so he could bask in the warmth. He spread his wings clumsily, soaking in the heat, chirping cheerfully. His personality was beginning to show. No longer a silent, fragile chick, Keto became playful. He pecked at my fingers when I cleaned his nest. He hopped restlessly in his bowl, testing his wings. It was clear he wanted more than a box. He wanted the world. 20 days since that first fragile moment on the roadside, Keto was unrecognizable. His body had grown sturdy, his wings sleek and powerful. He had survived hunger, cold nights, and the dangers of predators all, because he had never given up. By then, he could perch on the rim of his bowl, balancing with surprising confidence. When I placed him on the grass, he hopped quickly, pecking curiously at small insects. I remembered his first week when I thought he would never survive until morning. And now here he was, vibrant, demanding, filled with life. Raising Keto was not easy. Every 2 hours I woke to feed him, cleaned his nest daily, brushing away droppings, replacing cloth, making sure it smelled fresh. I learned from online forums, reading how to prepare food, how to handle fragile feathers, how to recognize signs of illness. Each time I opened the box and saw him alive, I felt relief. Each chirp, each stretch of his wings was a small victory. But I knew this was not forever. Keto did not belong to me, it belonged to the sky. The next stage was the hardest, teaching him to live without me. I began placing mealworms in small dishes, encouraging him to peck on his own rather than rely on my spoon. I opened the lid wider, giving him space to flutter. At first, his wings only lifted him a few inches before he collapsed awkwardly. But day by day, his muscles strengthened. When the wind stirred through the trees, Keto would lift his wings, sensing what they were meant for. He tilted his head at passing sparrows, his instincts stirring. I realized that soon he would no longer need the safety of his box. Despite preparing him for independence, a bond had formed between us. When I whistled softly, Keto chirped back. When I placed my finger near, he hopped onto it, his tiny claws gripping firmly. He would tilt his head, as though studying me with bright, intelligent eyes. I remembered the lifeless sibling beside him on the road, and how easily Keto could have shared that fate. Instead, here he was, live, mischievous, demanding, and endlessly curious. One afternoon, as the sun painted the horizon gold, I carried Keto outside. He perched on my hand, wings trembling. A breeze lifted his feathers, and he spread his wings wide, flapped once, twice, then lifted from my palm. For a moment, my heart clenched. Was he ready? He flew awkwardly to a low branch, then higher, balancing, chirping proudly. Amara, the mother elephant I had once seen in the park, flashed across my memory. Another story of life, of survival, of mothers and children. Keto was not mine to keep. He was part of the wild, and I was only a caretaker for a brief chapter of his life. That evening, as Keto perched in his box for the last time, I whispered a promise. When you are strong enough, you'll return to the sky, and I'll be here to watch you fly. I stroked his head gently. His eyes closed, his breathing slowed, and he slipped into sleep, warm, safe, alive. I thought back to the road where I had first found him. One chick gone, the other given a chance. The memory still ached, but looking at Keto, I knew his survival was a tribute to both. Weeks later, Keto would soar above the garden, circling once before disappearing into the trees. Each time, my chest tightened with both pride and loss. He was no longer the helpless chick crying in my hand. He was a bird of the wild, carrying within him the spirit of freedom. And yet on quiet mornings, I sometimes heard a familiar chirp near the window. Whether it was Keto or another sparrow, I could never be sure. But in my heart, I liked to believe it was him returning, if only for a moment, to say thank you.